Hello, I'm back, and today I am doing an absolute rite of passage for every newbie booktuber, which is the booktuber newbie tag. So I'll be answering some questions all about myself and what brought me here. So I will see you shortly, and we will begin the questions and answers. Okay, so this video will hopefully be somewhat unusual for me because one of the things I promised to myself when I started this blog would be that I would only make videos in which I 100% reviewed at least one book. So there wouldn't be any just random topics or where I just discuss issues in the book community or my thoughts on books in general, and when I did want to talk about those things, they would always come with a book review. So because I don't want to break my own promise, like 3 videos into my channel, at the end of this video there will be a small random book review of a book I have read this month, which you can consider a little cheeky spoiler for my end of September wrap up, which will be coming up very soon. Yeah, that's one thing I wanted to do on this channel, but I want to take part in the newbie tag because I'm a new channel and I think it's important for you to know where I'm coming from and whether that's something you're going to want to enjoy and want to spend time with me, because you're giving me a lot of time, hopefully, and you deserve to have that respected. So I'm going to answer these questions, and I really hope that you will stick around, listen, and if you could engage with the channel in any way to help me out by subscribing or liking or commenting, whatever, it would be wonderful. So here we go. Let's start with the first question. So the first question is the big one. Why did you start this channel? And it's something I've been thinking about for a long time, probably over a year at this point. Booktube really got me through the dark days of the pando, and it's really been a solace to me ever since. And the more I watched it, the more I realised that I was already doing so many of the things that booktubers are doing. I gamify my reading. I read a great deal, even with my job. I still read a lot. And the thing I didn't have, that obviously booktubers do have, is a community to really talk about it with. I have wonderful friends, like really wonderful friends who all love reading, and we often share so much of our reading with each other, but no, there's a difference between sort of talking about how much we like a book than me sitting down and giving 10 minutes of my feelings on everything I've ever read. So yeah, I wanted to be able to talk about my feelings in greater detail, and this medium isn't my natural medium. I really would prefer to write my feelings, but this is the way to build a community, and the more I thought about it, the more I realised I was already mentally doing it. And so I decided to just take that leap. And the other thing that's slightly less fun is that this year I moved away from London, where I've lived for over 9 years. Partially I've moved a couple of hours out of London, and while I still have access to all of my wonderful friends and I still work in London, I don't have the immediate closeness that I once did, and so I really wanted to build a community because of that as well, and because I'm a little bit more on my own than I once was, and I have caring responsibilities and so on. So I really that was just a small factor of it, but yeah. And then the third thing, I will hurry up, otherwise we'll be doing these questions forever, is that I'm not the most confident public speaker. I'm not the most self-confident person in general, actually, and I have dyslexia that doesn't affect my reading necessarily, but it really does affect my speaking, and my ability to plan what I'm going to say and say the words correctly, and it's something that's caused me a lot of fear in my life. And so I thought that this is a way of getting over that fear and, learning to say what's on my mind to an audience without sort of shaking in terror. So yes, that's why I'm here. And I really, really hope that, those things will work out. But I think just doing it will be enough. Just taking that leap and learning the things I need to do it is already a massive win for me. And so let's go on to question 2, which is, what are some fun and unique things that you can bring to Booktube? And I actually think quite a lot, actually. I am quite a creative person and I love gamifying my life in general. So I've probably got a tab here with about 70 or 80 video ideas. So I'm already like, I could make endless videos and never run out of energy or ideas for things that I want to do. I think I'm also I'm an older reader. I'm not old by any means, but I'm in my late 30s and I've been reading, between 50 and 100 books a year since I was, in my early teens. I've read a lot. I've read a lot of classics. I've studied a lot. I have a lot of life experience and a lot of cultural knowledge, and that means that I have my own approach to reading, my own thoughts on what I read, and as everyone does, obviously, but I have mine, and hopefully that will be something people will want to hear. I also, I've studied writing since I was in my early teens as well. I wanted to be an author pretty much from the age of 11. And I read every book on writing I could find back then. I have studied writing. Not in my education, but I've studied it myself. I copyright for my job. I understand writing as well. So when I can judge a book on its writing merits. Other than that, the other things, I really want to sort of eventually introduce some crafting elements into this, maybe when I get more confident with cameras and have more time, hopefully, and maybe do some reading and crafting videos. I have an idea. I want to make a lovely book nook in my bedroom and do a mural. So we'll see. That's down the line a little bit, but that's potentially something that could be coming. And yeah, the other final thing that I think is the most important, and I'm not saying it's unique to me, but I will always bring in complete integrity. I will never review a book I haven't read. I will never make a video that misleads in any way, intentionally at least. And I will also bring positivity. I don't like trash talking. I don't like giving nasty reviews. I will give a bad review if I don't like something, if I think there is a reason to say this isn't, this is either technically poor or it wasn't to my taste, but I will never delight in a bad review. I will never want to bring the author down. I will never take pot shots at, maybe an indie author or someone who is really new in their career. And I will never hate read a book. I may hate finish a book. We've all done that, where you're halfway and you hate it, but you're like, I am seeing this to the bitter end. But I will never pick up a book knowing that I'm going to hate it and read it for your entertainment, because I don't think that's a valued use of my time on earth. So yeah, I will just be here being me and trying to bring as many fun, interesting things to the internet as I can. And then question 3, what am I most excited about for this new channel? I mean, I've kind of covered it. I'm excited to meet people, talk to people, talk about the books that I love. That's really the top and bottom of it. And I'm just excited to see it grow, to see how different my content is in a couple of months, in a year maybe. See what I can do. So we will see. And of course I'm excited to read books, always. Why do you love reading? It's so fundamental to me that it's almost impossible to say. It's a part of who I am on a very basic level. But I think the thing for me and what excites me most is that every book is like a pocket of knowledge in your mind that you're adding to it yourself. And you can pick up a literal physical bit of paper and you can sit down and you can read it. And within 6 or 7 hours, you have a whole new section of your mind, of experiences, of knowledge of some sort, of a memory that you've made by reading this book. And they can expand. You know, you can read a book about a fictional mountaineer, and then you're like, oh my god, okay, that was really good. And then you see a book about Everest, and you're like, well, I want to read about Everest now. I'll read this book about Everest. And then you can read more books on that subject, or you can leave it there. But then the next time you're watching a documentary on TV and there's a documentary on the Alps mountains, you're like, oh, I'll stick that on. This is a new part of me now. This is something I'm interested in. And then, I don't know, there could be a snow fox in this documentary, and then you're like, oh, I'm into snow foxes now. I'm going to have a load of snow fox plushies. And so you can have a bunch of snow fox plushies in your house, and it all began with you spending a couple of hours with a book that you didn't know anything about. And I just love that. Like, any book is a massive opportunity. And it was probably a bit scarily passionate there, but that shows how strongly I feel. And how every book to me is a massive start of something, and it may not go anywhere, but it might, and that's the excitement. Okay. And then moving on into slightly, hopefully less emotional zones, what book or series got you into reading? Now, I don't actually remember learning to read. I was just a very early reader, and I'm not saying that to brag like I'm some genius. Like, I was an early reader in the same way some people are early walkers. It all evens out by the time you're a little bit grown. But so I was reading early, and there were always books around. And so my mother was a very passionate reader too. So I was never without a book, and obviously I grew up pre-internet. So I also, that was the only thing I had to do for a lot of time. And so I think it's not the books that got me into reading, but there are books that fundamentally changed me as a reader. I'd say there's probably 5, I think. So the first one, which the controversial one, of course, is Harry Potter, which was that came out when I was about 10, and our teacher read it to us in our sort of end of day reading, and it was a huge passion of mine, and it's not something I'm obviously going to talk about much on this channel, because it's almost a painful topic, the way things have gone with it. I do not support those unpleasant views, and so I drew a line in the sand several years ago and said no more Harry Potter, and that was hard, but I did it. And I don't want to turn this video into an argument about that. It's not. I chose to step away and move on to other things, and here we are. But it was one of the books that showed me that a world could mean everything to me and could be part of my personality and really be a fandom in a way. So that was the start of it. It wasn't the end, and we'll move on from that. And then the next big one was Discworld, which I discovered at 13. My mother had a copy of Weird Sisters by Terry Pratchett, and I started reading it on a whim, and it was the best experience. And I spent the next 10 years of my life working through everything I could find that Terry Pratchett had ever written. Those books are still a part of my personality. They are still part of who I am, and they are part of my outlook. And I judge every fantasy book by the standards of Terry Pratchett. It really is a series that if you haven't read, I recommend it wholeheartedly. And then the next biggies, I'd say Pride and Prejudice was probably the next big thing that entered my life. I was sort of, I watched randomly the 1995 Colin Firth Pride and Prejudice one Christmas. They re-aired it. I was not I was around to watch it in 1995, but I would have been like 7. I wouldn't have cared. But yeah, as a teenager, it just happened to be on, and they showed the first 3 episodes, and then the next week was the following 3 episodes, and it ended on the proposal, and I basically was like, I cannot wait a week. There's no fundamental way I can wait a week to find out what happens. I went and rushed to my mum's classics bookcase, got Pride and Prejudice, and I read it, and oh my god, it was a revelation. As someone who'd never really read a classic, an adult classic book before, it just blew my mind. And it started me reading Jane Austen, and then the Brontes, and then as many other classics as I could. Dickens followed, and so on, but that was the start for me. And then after that, I'd say probably the next big one. There's only this and one more. Don't worry, we'll move on quickly. But the next big one was Jeeves and Wooster, which I bought. I basically was with my grandparents for the summer, and they gave me some money to walk to the local bookshop and buy a book because I was running out of books to read. And because obviously I had a set amount of money, I went in the bookshop and really wanted to get the most bang for my buck. So I bought the biggest book I could find, which was a Jeeves and Wooster compendium, which was 4 novels in one. And I really didn't know much about it. They used to do a Jeeves and Wooster parody selling cigarettes, so I had some vague idea that it was something to do with cigarettes, which it isn't. And of course there was Ask Jeeves at the time, but I read it, and the comedy in Jeeves and Wooster was one of the best things I've ever read in my whole life, and is the standard for all comedy writing in my life. And oh my god, I think everyone should read Jeeves and Wooster, but for me that is again part of my soul, and led me into, along with Discworld, into the world of comic writing as well. And then the last one, which is, it's not a book that in itself I'd say, it's more what the book represents than what it actually means to me as a book itself, which was A Monster Calls, because basically during a couple of years before the pando, I really stopped reading altogether. I'd kind of been pushing myself to read worthy books, and books that would change me, and books that were meaningful, and not necessarily books that I wanted to read. And I've been doing that for a long time, to the point that, it was starting to be a chore reading. I rigidly read 52 books a year, and often hard-going books. And I just started to read less and less because it was a massive chore in the end. And I was just tired of it, and things that happened in my life. I lost someone very important to me, and I had to start caring for my mother, and I was still working quite in difficult circumstances, and life was very, very difficult for a while, and I just couldn't do it. I couldn't keep reading and pushing myself along with everything else. So I dwindled, and I think I reached the point where I'd read maybe 8 books in a year, which, I mean, I average about 125 now. So, and in the end, I just remember sat being at lunch and thinking, I just want to read one book, any book. I just want to do it. And so I opened my book app on my phone, and I just was like, I'm choosing the shortest thing, and I'm just reading it in lunch and see if I can finish it. And it was A Monster Calls. And it just awoke something in me. Not the book itself, which is a wonderful book, but just that finishing it, and just the pressure of not having to choose a particular thing that would be good for me, but instead choosing just something that wasn't a big deal, that I could just read and move on from if I didn't like it. I don't know, it just changed something, and I just started reading again, and reading and reading, and I think I read maybe 150 books that year, and then I haven't really stopped since, and I've not run into slumps for more than maybe a few weeks. I just haven't stopped. So that's the book that kind of did that for me. So yeah, those are the five. They're not really comments on the book themselves, but more my relationship with those books. What questions would you ask your favourite booktubers? I think at this very moment they would all be technical. Like right now, I just want to speak to someone and go, "Oh God, how do you do this? How do you do that? How do I do the camera? How do I? What settings do I use?" I'm pretty good at like the editing side and stuff. I do things like that for my job. But the camera, the lighting, that's very new for me. I've had a lot of trial and error. I will still have a lot of trial and error, and we'll see how that gets on. But yeah, right now that would be my whole thing. I think I think I probably want to speak to some of the British ones, because it feels like Americans generally are sort of taught to public speak from birth. They are taught to talk to a camera from birth, and to express and orate very early. Whereas British people are kind of taught that to put yourself out there and to make a big deal of yourself is one of the worst things you can do. So I maybe just ask them, how do you get over that? Oh my God, I'm putting myself out there in a ridiculous way feeling. But hey, I'm sure they'd say that you're doing fine. I'd hope so anyway. I'd ask a million other things as well if I was ever blessed enough to meet any of them, but we will see. And so, next question. What challenges do you think starting a Booktube channel will be the hardest to overcome? I've already discussed confidence. I really am scared of, negative comments and so on. They'll come. I know that. I'm a big girl. I understand these things. But it's probably going to be a little bit of a hurdle for me. And I know that I have things that you can mock and laugh at and comment on, and I get that. But I know I will get over it if people do make negative comments, but that is the big thing for me. And I think I've discussed my communication skills. That's something that's going to come with time, hopefully. But I have to do it and I have to practice. So, yeah, let's see. And obviously I will have to grapple with cameras and technology too. And then next question, when did you start reading? As I said, I read very early, so I really don't remember. There were always just books, and I had a bit of an strange growing up, but I spent a lot of time being ferried around in the back of the car by my parents, being more or less ignored while they did other things. So, and I spent a lot of time sitting in the back of places with a book, or if they were very organised, some colouring in, being expected to be very quiet and mind my own business while they did things. That makes them sound like criminals. Jesus. They ran a business for a while, and they just went to a lot of events and things and you just thought that I could come along too. So I was my entire life, pre-internet, was in the back of a car or in the back of some random hall with a book. That was what started it and what has continued it, and it's still my go-to form of entertainment. Where do you read? I would read on the go a lot. I read in short bursts. I jam reading into 10 minutes here, 20 minutes there. It's very rare that I'll sit down and go I'm going to spend 3 hours reading. It'll be an hour, 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 20 minutes. I will swap between books and audiobooks. I listen to audiobooks when I drive, when I clean, when I'm just gaming, and then I will switch out to a book when I'm in bed. The type of the book does have a factor. So if I have a physical book, I now have a reading chair. I have my own home with a chair. It's amazing. and so I can read in my reading chair now, which means that it's easier for me to read physical books than it was when I was jammed into a bedsit. And then I will read digital books, sometimes in the chair, sometimes in bed, or on my lunch break at work. And then I will, read audio when I'm on the go. And it usually means that I can get through a fair amount by just breaking it up and fitting it in when I can. Okay, what kind of books do you like to read? Which is also the last question. That's gone very quickly. My YouTube intro kind of says it all. I'm a genre reader. I like genre books and books kind of that are on the cusp of two genres or are literary on the cusp of another genre. That's where my heart and soul is. But yeah, the big six, I would say, are mystery novels, ideally detective, Agatha Christie, Sherlock Holmes, the Queens of Crime, the golden era of detection, some of the more modern ones. Sorry, not Richard Osman. But yeah, I love a good mystery book. It's probably the genre I'm least picky about. Fantasy is the genre I'm probably more picky about. I don't like bigger high fantasy, epic fantasy. I find it very hard going, but I like urban fantasy and low fantasy and things that are kind of a little bit more contemporary. Then horror is my kind of newest genre, I'd say. It's not something, I think when I was growing up, horror was Stephen King, horror was Dean Koontz. And it was a whole world of very male authors with often quite opinions that as a young woman it was quite hard to read, and made it very clear that this wasn't a place for me. And because I didn't really like horror movies, I was like, well, I don't like horror. And then I've started reading horror and I absolutely freaking love it. I mean, partially I'm a massive Walking Dead fan, so like zombie stories were my kind of step into it, and it's grown from there. So yes, I read a lot of horror now. I don't like body horror and gore, but everything else is fair game, especially with the sort of rise of diverse and interesting writers out there. Then sci-fi, I like too. A little bit picky about it. Again, don't like space, but like most other sci-fi. Dystopian fiction I kind of love across the board, partially because of my love of zombie movies and zombie media in general. And then romance, that's something else that I was very skeptical about at one time that I've now really started to enjoy. Primarily I prefer queer romance, but whether that's gay, bisexual, trans, sapphic, any queer romance I enjoy more than traditional romance, I would say. But that doesn't stop me from picking up traditional romance. Everything for me is about how good is the summary, and I will give most things a go if I like the summary. As well as that, I really like humour, classics. Again, I think there's only one genre that is an absolute no for me, and that is spy fiction. Like, I don't know why I hate it, but at the mere mention of a spy novel, I'm like, no, don't want to read it. And I know there's wonderful spy writers out there. I know that. There's James Bond. There's John le Carré. I don't want to read it. But that's the only genre, and that's such a small niche in the world of fiction. I'll take that as a win. But yes, I think that's all of them. I don't think I've missed any. I will jump in here with another question. I'll edit it in if I have forgotten something when I do the final count, but I don't think I have. So that is all of the questions. Feel free to talk about any of it in the comments. By all means, ask any questions, and I'll be happy to answer. And then that's it for now. Again, if you like this, I would love a cheeky like or cheeky subscribe. It would be wonderful. And now I'm going to quickly pop back with a random little book review. So we have some books to talk about on this video, and then we will finally properly say goodbye. So here we are, very cheeky book review. You'll have to forgive the blazing light that's over my shoulder now. It's suddenly got very sunny out there. However, cheeky book review, which is My Darling Dreadful Thing, which will be on the screen if you want to see the cover and the author. Also, look at that cover. It's amazing. It's gorgeous. It's so cute. And we are definitely into spooky season, which is why I wanted to talk about it. We know we're in spooky season because I've got the Tim Curry earrings on the go. And yes, I really liked this and really wanted to just talk about it. I will discuss it a little bit in my end of month wrap up, but it deserves its own little space. And so it's about Roos, who is in the Netherlands in the 50s, post-war, and she is being forced to do seances by her mother/guardian. And she's been forced to do this since she was about 4 years old in quite horrible circumstances. And when she was 4 and she was sort of trapped in a little space having to do tricks to help the seances, this ghost, a real ghost, appeared to her and befriended her and offered to pledge herself to Roos as a friend for life and protect her. And so she's a very eerie ghost with like an unhinged jaw, but she is Ruth's only friend. And now Ruth is in her late teens, still doing seances with the help of her ghostly companion, when a very rich woman comes to the seance and basically is so taken with her that she offers her mother money to have this girl come and be her companion, which Ruth is all too glad to do, very glad to leave home and go with this enchanting woman who she is attracted to. And she's taken to this Gothic manor, and the only other person who lives there is the rich woman's sister-in-law, who hates both her and the new companion, but she's also dying and is very ill, and so needs a lot of care. And basically, it's the three of them in this sort of crumbling manor as things get very eerie, and Ruth begins to believe that the only way to make this woman she loves happy is to bring back her husband as a ghost, which obviously goes spectacularly wrong. And if this story is sounding vaguely familiar to you, it's because it's Rebecca. It is the plot, beat for beat, of Rebecca. There are no seances and ghosts in Rebecca, obviously. But if you have read Rebecca, you were reading it going, oh yeah, this is, well, she shouldn't do that. We know how that's going to go. And oh yeah, this is how it happened in Rebecca. And I didn't mind that at all. I think if you haven't read Rebecca, it's going to be I think a more mind-blowing story for you, because it's going to have all these twists that you won't see coming, but if you read Rebecca, you are like, yes, I knew that. There's one particular bit where the sister-in-law is like, hey, you should do this, it will make her happy, and you're like, no, don't do that. This is literally beat for beat what happened in Rebecca. And the bit where the sister-in-law is taking her around her brother's room and showing the companion all his things, and it's a shot-for-shot remake of the bit with Mrs. Danvers in the original. And I'm not criticising it at all for being a remake of Rebecca. I would suggest legally that it's probably a little bit odd that they're not calling it a reimagining or something, because it is, that book is still in copyright. However, that's alleged and none of my business. But it is, it works for it. It adds its own things, its own twists, its own elements in a way that really elevates a story that you do already know. But it really does it in such a new way, with some scenes that even several weeks after I've finished reading it are still floating around in my brain, and just wonderfully dark Gothic horror scenes. and then in the last third of the book is where it really shines, because it becomes its own story after following beats that you kind of know. And I think the closest I would come to describing the last third of the book is the final sections of We've Always Lived in the Castle by Shirley Jackson, which that's a sequence that once you read it you will never forget. And this kind of works in the same way. And it brings its own twist, its own turns, its own payoffs to things that aren't Rebecca. And so you don't leave going, oh, that was just a reimagining. You go, oh, this was a reimagining that did its own thing and did it so well. And so, yes, if you're looking for really atmospheric, sapphic romance with horror elements, that's very gothic, very spooky season orientated, absolutely give this a go. I gave it 4.5 stars. I think if I was being generous, I could have probably popped it up to 5, but hey ho, that was where I felt at the time. And yeah, I suggest giving it a go. And yeah, that's it for now. I will love you and leave you. I will be back very shortly with a new video. And if you are just seeing me for the first time and you like anything you have seen, I have 2 videos already posted with different challenges. I've done a pirate reading challenge, and I was dog sitting for a week last week, and tried to read as many of my sort of pulpy sort of books to get them off my bookcase in that week. So there's 2 videos up. Please go view them if you like the sound of that, and if not, it's been an absolute pleasure anyway. Okay, thanks, bye.